Hello and welcome back to Game Develop Repeat. I'm your host Chris, and we're going to be talking about something that's sort of an underlying theme throughout this entire show. It's an issue that I've been skirting around and talking about in a whole bunch of different ways, but I want to address it directly for once. I want to just talk about why we play games, or why I play games, at least, because really I'm coming from my own perspective, and maybe it'll inspire you to think about why you play games a little bit, because I think it's an interesting topic and a useful topic to think about as a game developer. So without further ado or some long introduction, we're just going to dive straight in. The simplest answer to the question, why do you play games, would probably be because I like the way that they impact me. I like the effect they have on me. But I don't think that fully answers the question. When I give that answer, it's a bit of a cop-out. It kind of just raises a new question. It says, okay, and what do you mean by that? That's a non-answer. Please give me a real answer. Give me some details. I feel like this podcast is an attempt, generally speaking, to fill in all of those details. I think most of the time when I'm doing an episode of this podcast, I'm trying to understand why it is that I love a game. I'm trying to understand the impact that a game has had on me. I'm trying to understand what all I can learn from that game, not just as a game design exercise, but also as a person. Granted, as I create this podcast, I'm still learning about creating this podcast, right? I'm still learning what it is that I've learned from each of these games and how to communicate it effectively. And I'm learning to kind of pull information out of my memories about these games and my experiences with them and all of that good stuff. Now, what I want to do today is to zoom out. I want to zoom out and I want to look at the whole forest. I think I get lost at the individual games, the individual trees a little bit. And more I've been feeling the urge to go, yeah, but what about a bigger picture? What is really going on here? Can we zoom further out? Do we have to focus on this one game, just its core mechanics, just this, just that, just this one emotional experience within this one title? Can't we look a little bit more broad? So I want to look at the big picture, and the best way I know how to do that is to look at my own experiences in games and use myself as a bit of a case study and go through my timeline a little bit. I'll kind of cluster it. I'll look at groups of games. I'll look at chunks of time and say, okay, what did I learn from these games for the sake of brevity? And I'm not going to go too deep in any particular game. But here we go. And I would encourage you to consider taking a look at your own timeline and saying, if you find this interesting, I should say, but taking a look at your own timeline and saying, what did I learn from that game? Why was that game so compelling? How did I connect with other people through that game? Some of you might be playing Helldivers 2 with some of the community over in the Distinguished Humans podcast. Some of you might be involved in that, or maybe you did a community night. Is that game helping you build a community? I think it kind of is. I think every game that I've ever played is helping me build this community, which is something I hadn't registered until this moment, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. It's sort of a beautiful thing. I'm a big fan of the fact that I can take all those years of just playing games and condense them into a podcast that then brings people into a little bit of a community around game development where people can support each other, right? You never know how things are going to combine and connect to make something interesting. Now, with that in mind, the first game we're going to talk about is Final Fantasy VII. And we'll talk about this one in isolation because it was an interesting experience. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, so we're going to go very quickly through this one. When I played Final Fantasy VII, I played it with my brothers. I was a young kid, and I did not understand what was going on. We were all sharing one save file. And when I think back on that memory, and memory is deeply, deeply flawed, but when I think back on that memory, I remember it as this weird mutual adventure where we were just like struggling through this game. The game felt impossible because we didn't like understand the typo in the very first boss in the game, and like we didn't understand that it was telling us to attack at a different time than we were attacking. So we were always attacking when it was most dangerous, and we couldn't figure that out. So we were like, this game is impossible. And we used cheat codes for the entire game after that. And like even with that, we were all sharing this one file. It was a whole bonding experience with my brothers. It was nice. And we only had one PlayStation, and we only had so many hours in the day, and it was a huge, massive game. So we just decided we're going to play this together, all of us. And we're just going to share the same saved game file. It's just a little messy, It was just a messy little gaming experience, but it was really fun. That was a time before I was being a completionist, before I was being caught up in experiencing every little thing that a game has to offer me. That was a time when I was just going, whoa, this is interesting. What is this? This is cool. What happens if we go over there? What happens if we fight this thing? What happens if we do this? And it's odd to look back at that memory. It's sort of got the same feeling as the first time I played a musical instrument, which is a really cool memory for me. And oh wow, that's a really cool. I haven't thought about that one in a while, but the first time I played a musical instrument, I had no instruction. I was just strumming on a bass, right? I was just trying a few strings on a bass guitar. And I remember it being this like pure exploration and interest. And I remember somebody coming up and being like, "Hey, do you want to like know what to do? Like this person can show you what to do, how you're supposed to do it." And I was like, I don't care. I don't want to know how I'm supposed to do it. I just want to do the thing. So I'm just going to I'm having fun. I'm just playing with it. I'm just touching the strings and they're making noises, and that's really cool. And that has the same childlike energy as the way that I was experiencing Final Fantasy VII. Partially because I had two other people with me who were actually getting through the game while I just kind of looked and went, ooh, this is interesting. And then we take that childlike exploration and we carry it into Morrowind, right? And Morrowind is a beautiful game to explore. It's such a good game to explore. And this game has the same memory effect to me as like going out into the woods as a kid and everything feeling giant and just sitting in the roots of a tree because you're small enough to do that still, and like you're sitting over like a little pond and it feels like a pond, but it's basically a puddle to an adult, right? That's Morrowind. Morrowind to me is this game of an alien world. It's so fascinating, it's so interesting, it's so baffling. And it gave me experiences in exploration that I could not safely have in real life. I couldn't have regardless. It showed me the most alien and foreign things in a situation where I felt pretty secure, but could still have this thrill and this fear, right? The mud crabs in Morrowind were so fascinating because they could appear out of nowhere and start attacking you. I'm like, oh my God, that's a crab? I thought that was just a pile of mud, and I had this sense of wonder from this game. And these early gaming experiences, these RPGs at a young age, were so deeply fascinating to me because they brought forth this beauty. They brought forth this like fascination and sense of wonder and exploration and impossible things. Just incredible, impossible things that I got to experience as a kid. And there's like a wonder to it when I look back at those memories. And these days I'll go, oh man, people don't make games like Morrowind anymore. Why don't games have that impact on me? Like nobody knows how to make a game like Morrowind. It was so open and cool and interesting. I was a child. I was a child and I was in the game and I was like, this is the most interesting thing I've ever seen, because I was experiencing a really amazing game as a child, right? So There's a certain element of that. Now I want to take a look at, I want to move past the childlike wonder and exploration element, which taught me something to do with wonder at the joys of nature, I guess, and fascination with how big the world is and how much cool stuff there is out there. Because like Final Fantasy VII has a crazy, weird corruption story, and like, but I remember like a big snake and stuff. Like I remember how big the world was, and I remember the chocobos. Like that's what I was fascinated with as a child. I was like, here's all the cool, fun stuff. That's what I took away from it. So we've got these games that have this like wondrous exploration feeling to me. Let's move forward to games where I was getting real competitive. Let's look at that side of things a little bit and how I pulled that from gaming. We've got Starcraft, where I got absolutely stomped by my brothers repeatedly. I was so bad at this game, and I was so mad about it. And why was I bad at this game? I would always wallow in my base. I would stay in my base. I would build walls. I would build towers. It would frustrate my brothers to no end to try to like attack my base, but I would always lose. I did not win at StarCraft. It's possible I won once or twice. I don't remember winning because I would wallow. I would wallow and wallow and wallow. I would never expand. I would never explore. I would never get new resources. I wasn't trying to compete for resources and stuff. I was just going, well, my base will be safe and then they won't be able to take me and then I'll figure it out. Well, that didn't work. That did not work. So that taught me an odd sort of a lesson. And that ties in to real life. It showed me a tendency that I have, which is to go, oh, well, this is safe and we'll be secure here. So let's be secure here while we figure out this other thing. And I, in a competitive scenario, would go, okay, I'm just going to keep being safe. And then before you know it, they're knocking at the doors and breaching the gates and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, man, I just needed more time. No, I wasn't making any forward movement. So I have to, to this day, I have a tendency to want to wallow when I play a war strategy because the fog of war is scary. But the fog of war is always going to be scary. The unknown is always scary. And that's why, quick aside, if you're thinking about learning to make a game, go out into the fog of war. Download the engine, watch the Brackeys video and follow along, or like pause every 20 minutes and then do what he just did or whatever, right? Do something to take that action, to just dip your toe into the fog of war, scout outside your base a little bit, because that's what I learned to do when I started playing Warcraft 3. And I worked hard at Warcraft 3. Although even when I got pretty good, I was still pretty bad about wallowing. When I finally learned to scout, when I finally learned to explore, when I finally learned to crush my enemies before they had a chance to get ahead, that is when I started to really get good at Warcraft 3, or like at least decent, you know? And I also learned about the power of good tools because we had good custom hotkeys when playing Warcraft 3, which was very nice. That was a nice improvement. They're very similar to what you would see in like StarCraft 2 or any modern war strategy where you have all the bindings on your left hand. We had that for Warcraft 3, and it was completely legit, by the way. You're allowed to make custom Warcraft 3 hotkeys. They even gave you a tutorial on how to do it on their like forums or on their website or something. People would occasionally get mad at us for using them, and we would be like, "Look, here, you can do it too. Here you go. Here's the info you need." But yeah, it was great. It was a really good time, and it taught me a lot about competition, and it let me feed this competitive spirit that I have, this competitive drive that I had, or maybe it helped shape that competitive drive. Who can know? But it really fed into that. And I used that same feeling a lot later on when trying to learn music, or at least I tried to. I kind of misused it because I was a little bit more focused on other things, and I misused it. But it gave me an understanding of this competitive drive. So if I had put my attention into music more appropriately, it would have been great. I still got further in music than I think I would have had I not had the bit of a drive that I developed over the years. But boy, did I practice by just slamming my head against a wall repeatedly rather than having an informed and methodical method of like becoming better, right? So that's kind of how I misused it. I just went, oh, if I just keep doing this, I will get better. And it's like, no, not quite. You know that, but you're not paying attention to that, right? Anyway, bit of a tangent. Diablo 2. That game, I don't even know how to talk about the impact that game had on me. It was something about grinding. There was a phase in Diablo 2 where I wanted other people to do everything for me. And at some point while playing Diablo 2, I learned that the best way to play this game is to play it. To play it yourself. Imagine that. And that has been a life lesson. That's just a lesson. That's just, at some point, other people stop doing stuff for you, and you just got to do it for yourself, right? Diablo 2, I was always trying to get somebody to give me a rush. I was always trying to get people to do this, that, or the other. And a lot of times, people would help me, right? And I didn't actually make progress from other people helping me. That's the weird thing about it. When other people do the work for you, you don't really move forward. This is why people say something like, oh, well, you can only really help yourself. Yeah, quite literally. You have to, it has to be kind of an internally motivated thing a lot of the time. Like, somebody else can want to drag you along and bring you to success and do everything for you. They would love to do that for you if they can. But they can't. You have to do it for yourself. So, having said that, let's take a look at things that happened much later. So we're done with my middle school and high school gaming experience, and the elementary school even. There's a lot of other games in there, but we're going to tap out of that, and we're going to skip forward. I barely played video games during college. Except for during summers. I barely played games while at college. I'm not sure entirely why. I just didn't. I was like, well, I'm doing my coursework. I can't be gaming at the same time. Whatever. Not doing it. Too busy. Music ed major. We got a lot of stuff to do. I got to do practice. I got to slam my head against a brick wall and not actually practice intelligently. Like, I got all this stuff I got to do, right? So I didn't really play during college. Now, after college, I played a few different games that had a heavy impact on me. I played Stardew Valley. I played Celeste. I played Spiritfarer. And I think this is a period of time that is important to give you a little bit of context for. How do I give this context appropriately? After college, there was a chunk of time where I was not having a good time. I was having, in fact, quite a bad time. Things were not going well. There were significant tragedies going on in the extended family. There were things in my own life that were not going well whatsoever. My career was not panning out in the slightest. Things were not good. And during this time, at some point I played Stardew Valley. And Stardew Valley was marvelous. Stardew Valley was such a refreshing escape and a reminder of things that I really like. It was like, hey, remember the fact that you really love nature? Like, maybe you should use that. Maybe you should pay attention to that. Maybe you should embrace that a little bit. Hey, remember the fact that you like communities, you like other people, you want to be around other people. Maybe you should do that. You know, it was just this like gentle nudge to say, hey man, come on. There are things that you can do that will help you move forward, like that'll help you get out of this rut, that'll help you deal with all of the difficulties that you're struggling with. And then we've got Celeste. Celeste specifically like hits me and goes, hey, you know how you're really feeling how do I phrase this? Like there's an insurmountable obstacle in front of you. You know how you're feeling that way? Well, here's a character who feels the same way, who is climbing a mountain, and they're going through all this stuff, and they're going through this crisis of confidence, and they have this whole thing where they're fighting themselves and they have all these difficulties, and it's clear that they've got deep struggles that are affecting them on a tremendous level. So maybe you can help guide this character through that. And then if you can help guide this character through that, maybe you can help guide yourself through that. Maybe you have more power than you think you do. Right? And then it's hard for me to even say more about that game. I think this is the game where I talk about it and I go, it's cheesy. It's cheesy to talk about all of the impacts that this piece of art has had on me. It's cheesy to talk about how much this game impacted me, because how could a video game have such a significant impact on somebody? Easily. It could easily have a significant impact on somebody, and I don't want us to ignore that fact. A video game can have a huge impact on you. It's true. Same thing as a piece of art. Same thing as a book. Right? So we'll just leave that at that. But Celeste had a huge impact in showing me, like, yeah, this character can make it through this, you can make it through that, and you helped this character through this, so you can help yourself through that. Through this huge obstacle of figuring out what you're going to be doing with your career and getting through all of these like problems in your personal life and these like psychological barriers that you're running up against, and how do we move forward and all this stuff. Right? It kind of sets a weird artistic example that you can go through. And I think the important thing to remember is that people are making these games because they are taking their experiences and sharing them with the world. It's not just something someone made. It's something someone experienced and wanted to talk to you about. And that is so important to me. Every beautiful work of art is not just a beautiful work of art. It's something somebody went through or felt deeply, you know? And I think it's time to talk about Spiritfarer, because Spiritfarer hit me when I was dealing with the idea of mortality. I was playing Spiritfarer, and this game deals with death. It deals with it very directly, but it deals with it in the most wonderful, optimistic way, and it emphasizes the bonds that tie people together. And when I played this game, it could not have been maybe it could have been at a better time, but it couldn't have been at a more impactful time for me. I was playing this game, and it was like breaking my shell back open. Like, I was playing this thing and I was going, oh yeah, oh geez, that is instilling deep emotions in me. Having to confront this idea of somebody's mortality and how they look at their own past and how they confront everything that has happened in their life and how that has impacted the other people around them and how it ties everyone together. And it hit hard because I was thinking about that sort of thing a lot at that time without realizing it. I was feeling it on like a very subconscious level. I was thinking about mortality. I was thinking about death because I had seen a lot of near-death stuff and a little bit of full-on death stuff. All right. So this was relevant, and this game helped me look at that. And anything that helps you look at something that's hard to look at is pretty valuable in my eyes. So what is the big picture here? What is the big picture of why I'm playing games? Like I said, it's because of the impact that they have on me. And what is the impact that they have on me? They inspire me to connect with things that I love. They inspire me to think about the emotional things that I'm going through and to process them. And they help me process them if I'm having trouble honestly acknowledging the things that I'm contending with. And they help me to embrace my competitive nature in a way that lets me measure it and see whether or not the methods I'm using to get better are actually useful methods for improvement, if that makes sense. They help me in all these ways and so many other ways, right? But those are just a few examples. And that's my best clean answer. That's my short answer for why I play games. How does this relate to our own game development? The first thought I have on that is don't be afraid to share. I feel like the games that have had a significant emotional impact on me, like Celeste and Spiritfarer, have some degree of emotional vulnerability from the people writing the story or developing the game, right? And I think that if you want to have that sort of a story, if you want to have that sort of an emotional impact and you're worried about people seeing you, you're worried about people seeing whatever thing it is that you're ashamed of, or you don't want to communicate, or you don't want anybody to figure out, or you don't want to expose to the world because it's a little soft spot or a little vulnerable spot, or you feel concerned about it, I'd say don't be afraid to share, as long as it's something that you feel you want to share, right? If you don't want to share it, don't share it. But if you want to and you're a little scared to, I think it's okay to do it. And then I think that can help you create art and help you process the art that you're creating, which I think is huge. I once wrote a novel, a first draft of a novel. It wasn't good. It was not good. But I did write a first draft of a novel. And when I did this, it helped me process a bunch of things I was feeling and thinking about and all this stuff. And I never turned it into anything. And I was scared when I was making it of showing it to the world. Right? There were elements of it that I was terrified of sharing. And I think exploring those elements was the most valuable part of that novel writing process for me. So if you're thinking about writing a game that has like a story that has some big impact or some emotional tie to you or whatever, you don't even have to share it if you don't want to. You can just make it and then keep it to yourself. So you might as well just go ahead and make the art. And then if you do want to share it, share it. If you don't want to share it, don't. You're not bound to sharing stuff with other people. But at least with yourself, when you're making the art, if you want to take the risk, take the risk. And if you want to take the risk later of showing it to somebody else, okay, take that risk too. Next thought I have about how this relates to developing a game is you can't know what somebody else is going to get from your game or your artistic project or whatever the heck you're working on. You can't know what somebody else is going to pull from it, right? People interpret things differently all the time. So if I read, I don't know what book, I can't come up with a specific example. If I look at a piece of art and I go, oh, it's clear that this artist was deeply enraged and angry at the world. Somebody else might look at that piece of art. Let's say it has a lot of reds and pinks in it. Somebody else might look at that work of art and say, oh, this artist was deeply lusty and like full of this passion and whatever. Like, if the artist comes out and says that this is exactly what the work of art means, then people can't interpret it anymore. So I'd say, one, I stand firmly in the camp of don't tell people what it means. Let them figure it out for themselves because they're going to have a more interesting interpretation than you could ever tell them to have. And then two, you don't know what somebody's going to get from what you made. You know? Now there's a bit I wanted to talk about in the earlier chunk about excessive gaming, and I'm going to put it in this segment instead. I think there was a chunk of time where I was gaming too much, right? I was gaming a lot. And I think this happens. And the one thing I want to say is it's questionable to make a game that is intentionally enticing people to play excessively, if that makes sense. I think if you're creating a game that allows people to play as much as they would like, that's one thing. If you're creating a game that is begging people to keep playing endlessly, that's a different thing. And I'm not sure exactly where that line is. I'm not sure how to draw it. I do know what I think is unethical in terms of game design. And I do think that there are some places that are borderline cases for me where it depends on context and all this other stuff. But I would say that a game should not necessarily seek to improve someone's life, but it should definitely not intentionally manipulate people into a pattern of never stopping playing the game. I if you're not getting the picture here, I do not like live service games. As a rule, I don't like them. Now, are there exceptions to that rule? Yes, of course. But generally speaking, if this game is intended to be the one game that you play for the rest of your life, I tend to look at it and go, okay, no thanks. I would like to absorb a large number of experiences from many different creators, but I'll play your game for a little bit and then I'll leave it. But thanks, cool, have fun. But maybe I'm going into gaming from a different angle, you know? If you are going to make a live services game, and I think there are really good ones, don't manipulate people into paying you extra money every week. You know, don't do the thing. I don't like that thing. That's my take there. But, you know, whatever. The people who are going to do that, they're already doing that. And they're probably not listening to this podcast. But, you know, there it is. There's my comment on that. Let's wrap this episode up. I've only got one question for you today, which is, how has gaming impacted you at different points in your life? And normally I answer my own questions, but I think I've already done that in this episode. Now, the tip for myself this week, and maybe for you, depending on how you're feeling, is to notice the little positive things in games, in your life, wherever you want to notice them. That's everything I've got for you this week. If you want to contact me, you can contact me at anxiousbuddhagames@gmail.com, or you can hop into the Discord. Other stuff we have going on. We've got the Twitch stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern to 7 p.m. Eastern. 3 hours of game dev, 2 hours of gaming. That is all I've got for you this week. And I hope you have a good week. I hope you get out there and you make some stuff and you have fun with it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.